Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the 12 greatest composers who were not the greatest melodists. Now, I know some of you could probably put this list together like in your sleep, but what happened if you've been participating in this little series of composers who were this and that, is that a lot of people were like hysterical over the fact that I didn't mention some great composers as the greatest melodists because, as you pointed out multiple times, oh, I love so-and-so's melody. Oh, I think so-and-so wrote the best tunes. Oh, his tunes were just amazing. Well, nobody cares. The fact of the matter is, and this is the reality, what we're talking about is composers who, all great composers write great tunes at one point or another if they're tonal composers. They do. It's what they do. So that's that. But it's not the essence of their art. Every composer has a balance of elements, a recipe that goes into making their individual style. And certain things weigh more heavily than other things. And this is particularly true of the great composers of the first Viennese school, Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven, those people. Mozart was unquestionably, for example, a great melodist. I mean, he was the essence of gorgeous vocal melody. He really was. He was incredible. Haydn and Beethoven, not so much. So they're on this list because, they could make a tune out of the Vienna telephone directory. They could take anything and make something great out of it because it was what mattered more was what they did with the material they chose rather than how great the tunes were. We'll get into that in a minute. So let's go through the list. And that's what I want you to keep in mind. All of them wrote great tunes. They did. And you may desperately adore the tunes that they wrote. That doesn't make them great melodists just because you may like them. It's a more objective sense that we're trying to get to here. Do we get to that at some point? I don't know, but that's the object in any case. So try and keep that in mind. Bach, J.S. Bach, the great J.S. Bach. Bach was, he wrote wonderful tunes. We all know he wrote wonderful tunes. Some of his tunes are the most famous in the universe, but that doesn't mean that was the thing that he did more fabulously than anything else. He was a contrapuntist. We've had that discussion already, haven't we? Yes, he also wrote some wonderful melodies. Okay, good. Next, Haydn and Beethoven, actually, are the next two, because I just mentioned them. Haydn was the most fascinating musical mind because of the way he looked at music as material with which to build things. He was even more so than Beethoven, to be honest with you, because Haydn's idea of music was almost tactile and shape-oriented and architecturally. It was so amazing how he could just take something in tones that was a shape, a thing, an object, and then do something incredibly creative with it. And that's what he did. He also wrote great melodies. He wrote the Austrian national anthem, which is now the German national anthem. He could write great tunes. And all great composers really valued the ability to write great tunes. But they also understood, for the most part, that great tunes were something that you couldn't produce on demand. You either had them or you didn't. And once you had them, you would, thank the heavens that something that you had them. Remember Elgar with the big tune in the first Pomp and Circumstance March, where he said to his wife, I've got a tune that's going to slay him. It's not, I wrote it, I thought it up. It happened. And that kind of happening is a gift. It is, which comes sometimes for all the composers. It came all the time, sometimes less frequently, and other composers focused on other things. Beethoven is a case in point as well. Beethoven did amazing things with tunes that were basically nothing. Da, 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 da. That is not a great tune. I don't know how to break it to you. The theme of the Diabelli Variations, which was written by Diabelli, was a trashy little waltz tune. But Beethoven looked at it and he said, "Oh, I can do so much with this." So he didn't need the great tune. Sometimes he had them. Sometimes he did. No question about it. But it wasn't a necessity because he was able to work with the tunes that he had. His tunes were appropriate. They were correct for what he was doing. And that's the point. Schumann! Schumann was a harmonist more than anything else. Like a lot of the great Romantic composers, especially the first generation, they were expanding the language of music in terms of what it could do harmonically, not so much rhythmically. Well, Schumann was quite interesting rhythmically also. But as a tunesmith, a lot of his melodies are quite foursquare. I mean, I'm always amazed with how much they sound like college fight songs. Doesn't mean they're not good tunes. But like the Fourth Symphony, dum, bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, bum. I mean, it's just sequential. It's not, there's a lot in Schumann that is melodically not terribly interesting, but again, it's what he makes of it. It's how he harmonizes his melodies, how he underpins their rhythmic structure, and of course, as a composer for the keyboard, he was sui generis. He was an amazing, amazing artist, and that's a different category entirely. Mendelssohn also belongs with Schumann as part of that early generation of romanticists. Some people adore Mendelssohn. He wrote beautiful melodies. My God, the opening of the Violin Concerto, every tune in the Violin Concerto, the opening of the Italian Symphony, there's so much there. This whole Scottish Symphony is just glorious. It's incredible. It's got a motto theme. They're wonderfully memorable ideas. But are they the greatest melodists? Or are there other things going on that put these ideas in relief and maybe make them sound greater than they actually are if you sort of take them separately? Mendelssohn wrote some great tunes. He did. Songs without words. He did la, 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 la. The little spring song. Fabulous, fabulous material. Greatest melodist forever, compared to all the other great melodists who are out there? I don't think so. Liszt really worked best with other people's material. I mean, that's just a fact. He did write lots of original stuff, but his own original melodic invention, I wouldn't call it weak. It was weird. It was just weird. It was strange. It was sometimes sort of chromatically unusual. It wasn't always memorable. It was dressed up in sort of virtuoso trappings. And his late stuff, which is very austere and very sparse, is incredibly characterful. I find it enormously powerful and memorable. But these are not great melodies. These are, again, objects, things he's working with. Brahms wished he were a great melodist. Let's put it that way. And every so often, the heaven-sent melodic thing descended on Brahms. That second subject of the second string sextet. Da da ya da 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 ya da 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 da. Oh God, it's gorgeous. And of course, some of you pointed out, well, he wrote the lullaby. Yeah, but he also wrote another 200 and some odd songs that nobody particularly cares about. Not that they're not good songs, not that they don't have beautiful tunes, but you don't see people running around singing all of the other Brahms songs, even the four serious songs that get played once in a while. The German Volkslieder, folk tunes, supposedly, yeah, theoretically. I've sung the Liebeslieder waltzes and the Zigeunerlieder and all of these things. They're fun and they have some wonderful melodies. Yes, they do. The symphonies have some great tunes in them, but that was not what Brahms did. Brahms was a contrapuntist. Brahms was a a sonata form guy. He was a form guy. He was an architect. He did all kinds of wonderful things with music. Melody was but one of a larger scheme, and not the most important part of it either necessarily, although I think he wished it had been otherwise. That's why he was so infatuated with Dvorak. Bruckner. Oh my God, Bruckner. Bruckner didn't write melodies. Bruckner wrote things. I mean, he wrote motives. Da 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 ba ba. That's a motive, and it's incredibly memorable. I mean, it gets stuck in your brain and it's there forever. He was really good at writing catchy, short motives that he stuck together like Legos into larger blocks of sound. Even in the slow movements, there are wonderful ideas. But I don't go around humming Bruckner adagios. I mean, do you? Seriously? And there are wonderful ones. Look at maybe the most beautiful melody he wrote in an adagio is the second subject of the adagio of the Seventh Symphony. Ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da. It sort of goes round and round and round and repeats itself. It's really a short little object that goes in circles, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely lovely. But is he a great melodist? Was his music turned into pop songs like Full Moon and Empty Arms or Tonight We Love? I don't see that. I really don't. Maybe Tomorrow We Pray. That would have been his song, his pop song. Don't ask me what tune we would have set it to, but there you go. Mahler wrote fabulous tunes, but they were characteristic. They were in his own style. Mahler was known, people don't appreciate this actually. Mahler wrote some of the longest melodies in existence. Mahler's ideas can stretch on for minutes at a time. Really fascinating. One of the most interesting things about Mahler, for example, in the way he handled melodic ideas. Think of the opening of the Second Symphony. Da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-dum, that business, right? With the cellos and basses. The cellos and basses go on with this idea for, the first 5 minutes. It doesn't end. If you look at the score, it doesn't really end until you get to that dum, bum, 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 with the low harps and basses that finally opens what sort of is kind of the development section. Da 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 da. That start when that business happens. But the music's been played for 5 minutes, and all kinds of things have been happening on top of that original idea. All kinds of other tunes and motives and things as the music marches along. But that is a continuous thread of baseline melody that goes. It's incredible. The opening of the Ninth Symphony. The da da, ya da ba da 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 da. It's an incredible melody, and he spins it out endlessly. Really a fascinating melodist for what he did, but these are not conventional tunes, not in their shape, in their phrasing, in their length, in anything. They're all really, really personal to Mahler, which is one of the things that makes him a great composer. But was the melody, the acme of his art, the thing that he did to the not exclusion, but to minimize any of the other qualities of what he did, rhythm and harmony and orchestration and all that stuff? No, it's not. Absolutely not. Stravinsky was like Liszt. Stravinsky was another composer who had to work with other people's tunes. There's very little original Stravinsky melodically, but what he did with them, oh my God, he Stravinskified, isn't that a great word? Stravinskified everything. He really did. Once he got done with it, it might as well have been by him. It's amazing what he did with these things. But, his approach was harmonic, it was rhythmic, it was coloristic, he did all these things. But finding original material was something he did like an explorer. He was a spelunker. You know, he went into the cave of classical music and came out with various treasures that he proceeded to, treat with Stravinskitude. And that's what happened. Janacek is another fascinating case. Janacek didn't write tunes. Janacek wrote little motives. He was kind of like Bruckner in that sense. He really was. And he had a conversation with Dvorak about the fact that he was so short-breathed as a melodist. He was very, very conscious of it. And so he made lemonade out of lemons. He took this, what you might think is a failing, and turned it into a strength, writing these mosaic-like pieces that just pulsate with rhythm and life and energy, and all based on little Czech speech rhythms and tiny motives that become these thrilling, absolutely thrilling, amazing tapestries, instrumental tapestries. Just an incredibly fascinating technique. It just goes to show that if you're a genius, first of all, and if you have a real musical impulse, it doesn't matter what you're good at and what you're not good at. You're going to wind up being good at whatever you need to be good at, right? I mean, you'll put it together somehow. You will find a way. And Janacek found a way. And last but not least, among the major composers, the great composers we're talking about. And I have to say, some of you and these other things came up with names that are merely footnotes in the history of music, or major people because they discovered something revolutionary, but they weren't great composers. They were theorists. They were, names, that we have in the history. And we're not interested in those. We're interested in people who were big deals, not people who did something first, people who did something best. That's the point. I think that's our working definition of the greatest composers. Shostakovich, another composer who had a very characteristic melodic sound, but who wasn't known for his tunes. I mean, nobody cares about Shostakovich's tunes except when he was writing in a pop music vein. And then his tunes were famous for being popular. That is, Foursquare, the waltz. He could write those kinds of tunes, actually. And they're really very good, but they're also kind of anonymous. We only care about them because Shostakovich wrote them. It's not like, this is the greatest tune ever. This was Shostakovich slumming. And he had the right to do that. In his symphonies and other works, his melodic material was, again, very characteristic. It was right for what he wanted to do with it, but it wasn't conventionally like hummable. It wasn't the kind of melody that we go around saying, oh, the guy wrote such incredible tunes. I want to go hear all of Shostakovich's greatest melodies. I mean, what would that look like? You don't see record labels saying, the great melodies of Shostakovich. It just doesn't happen. And it isn't going to happen. He had types of melodies. He had the threnody, the elegiac melody. He had the Offenbachian can-like, operetta melody, which is usually based on a rhythm, the Rossini William Tell Overture type melody. Eventually, remember, in his 15th Symphony, he just said the hell with it and went and quoted the William Tell Overture because he'd been sort of doing it all along after all, and he finally figured, what the heck. That's Shostakovich and his approach to melody. It was a functional approach. And he wrote some amazingly expressive tunes, had some fabulously powerful ideas. Of course he did. But that didn't make him a great melodist. So that's the list. You could contribute other composers who you think were absolutely great composers, but weren't great melodists. It's not a crime. Not a crime. However much you may love them, the reality is what it is. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.